Hi everyone, my name is Leah. I'm currently a junior, and a few weeks ago, I decided to watch Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast from 1946. I was absolutely taken aback by how incredible the costumes were. That movie made me decide to explore costume design for my explorations project. Costume design is one of the most important parts of film. There's something very interesting about the way you can change a character based on the color of their shirt or how they dress. Having been interested in fashion and costume design beforehand, I set out to explore the process of designing costumes for Hollywood. To start with, I researched 3 individual costume designers: Edith Head, Bob Mackie, and Sandy Powell. Edith Head was one of the most prolific costume designers in film, having been active from 1927 to 1981 and designing for over 400 projects. Bob Mackie is best known for his iconic tour costumes for the singer Cher. I chose Sandy Powell because of her work on Sally Porter's 1992 film Orlando. Orlando has some of the most magnificent costumes I've ever seen, and Powell does a lot of period pieces, which is why I decided to look into her process. I've included 3 different sketches from each designer. So, how do you design a costume? Well, there are 4 primary steps to it. Find a script. Mark the script for context clues. Research the time period and draw your sketches. Here is an infographic that I made about it. Step 1 is to find a script that you really care about. I read through so many scripts on several websites until I found one that really spoke to me. Unlike a professional, I wasn't hired for a specific job, so I had the luxury of really getting to pick a story because I liked it. I decided to go with a 1-act play with a limited amount of characters because of the time constraints of the project. I ended up choosing St. Martin's Summer by the British writer Cosmo Hamilton. The next step was to go through the script and find various context clues about the settings and the characters. For example, based on one of the characters' stories, I figured out that the time period has to be somewhere between 1913 and 1915, and that it takes place specifically in southern England, either Hampshire or Southampton. I highlighted and made note of character lines and action lines until I had a good understanding of each character. I then researched the time period and fashions that would have been appropriate for it. I started by creating a Pinterest board with subsections for each character. I made sure that each image I'd pinned was actually from the time period I needed. After I had a good visual understanding, I read various sources and timelines to make sure that everything I'd pinned had checked out. One source that I found very helpful was the Victoria and Albert Museum archives. Step 4 was to draw up some final sketches. I printed out a croquis because I'm not particularly good at drawing human figures yet. Since women's fashion was so varied between the 2 years, I went with two main examples for female styles in the 1910s. For Enid, I designed 3 pieces that represented a trendier, younger look. A dress with a flared A-line skirt and a V-neck cut, which was just starting to become a mainstay of fashion at the time, a floral brooch with a red stone, and a style of walking jacket which had been introduced right before World War I. I picked red and pink tones for Enid because she's described as, quote, quick and full of life and energy, unquote. For Miss Allingham, I chose a hobble skirt, which was a staple of Edwardian fashion, and a high neck button-up to show an older and more mature take on the time period. I created a wide brim hat to go with it, embellished with feathers and flowers as would have been appropriate for the time. I chose purple tones for Allingham because she's lively like Enid, but is also grieving the loss of her previous life, so I went with cooler tones. Sir Hawkhurst was simultaneously the easiest and hardest to design for. The easiest because men's fashion hasn't really evolved since the 1910s, but the hardest because I couldn't find many reference images for suits specifically from those years. I also don't have much experience drawing on a male croquis as it is. I gave him a 3-piece suit, as would be expected of a man like him. I colored him with aged blue tones because the script describes him as a kind but almost closed-off man. And with that, I conclude my explorations project. This has been one of my favorite projects